Hi, everyone, and welcome to the book launch for Hussam Jefee-Bahloul. And thank you for being here. And I'm very excited to launch his book, The Chronicler of Indifference. And here it is. And before you hear him read from his book, I would like to read a few sentences he wrote in his book. This book is not about Syria. The homeland only lingers in the background like an essential and necessary sky, but is relative and mutable. And I'm just so happy to publish this book. And this is one of the main reasons why I published and started Cervena Barva Press. It is to publish translations. Translations make me tick, basically. I come alive when I read them. And the press has published translations from all over the world and also from US writers who moved here from a different country that write in English. There are many presses publishing translations, but years ago you could hardly find any. So I'm very happy to see a lot of them coming out. Most of my library is translations. And now I'd like to introduce Hussam Jefee-Bahloul. He is a poet, musician, and psychiatrist. He was born in Syria and currently practices and teaches at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. He writes poems and essays in Arabic and English and has published essays in both languages. Bahloul is also a musician and songwriter, and his work puts poetry, music, and visual arts together. He has toured many cities, and right now he is working on a project called Friday Market, which is a musical collective that aims at making original Arabic music, keeping up the spirit of classical songs. And I would like to also welcome Samantha Kostmayer-Sulaiman, who is the other translator of this book. And I'm so thrilled she's here this evening, too. And so now I give you Hussam.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much all for being here. This means a lot to me to be able to speak a little bit about this book, even though I kind of was not, I have to say that I was not very excited about it until I saw it come in the mail to me in this very beautiful, you know, in the way it came out. It made me feel like it is actually something real that is completely outside of my it's no longer mine in a sense. It came to me rather than me sending it to Gloria. So that was a very symbolic transformation of this book to become an entity of itself and to be able to, through it, for me to be able to connect with other people through what I've written in it. Those poems in there are so heterogeneous, yet homogeneous because they came in a period of time where I was going through a lot of transformation. I've written most of these poems between 2008 and 2017, and I've put the book aside since. The, the poems, I mean, they speak for themselves. I'm going to read some for you, and then I would really like to just have a discussion about what I'm reading, about if you guys have read the book, if you wanted to say anything about it. If you want to ask me things about it, I'm more than happy to. I'm just going to read a couple of poems to start with, just to get us off started, and we'll go from there. I chose to start with migration because this was it really what kickstarted my whole process of writing these poems in Arabic first, and then, but some of them actually I've written along the way in both languages. Some of them were written originally in English, but this one particularly was written in Arabic. It's called Migration. It's the first one in the book. I don't know what happened exactly. What I've been told is that I left Latakia in a mysterious way. Some say I was smuggled alongside migrants, illegal goods, local tobacco, and aged wine aboard an old Suzuki truck to Turkey, Greece, then Hungary, and miraculously, America at last. Some say who left was someone else, someone who bears my name and a fake passport, who has my eye color, my curly hair, and an irregular poetic period. Whispering, others said, I stayed behind somewhere discreet, jumping roofs at night, a thief looking for love in the schizophrenic town. Cynics contrived other rumors, that I died choking on my tears, or dehydrated from excessive weeping, or overdosed on my pills and perished. A fortunate martyr, liberated as they won't pray for my corpse. The insightful bunch claim I never existed, for my absence to make any noise, and all that happened was merely a well-plotted dream directed by Steven Spielberg. According to me, the protagonist of this anecdote, all I know is that I left the country somehow, leaving behind a tree growing alone on marble floor in a 7th floor apartment with arrogant balconies that cleanse the drought of the Mediterranean with jasmine, and an endless thirst in that land of mine. I'm gonna go random. I'm gonna read maybe 2 more, randomly. A dead man writes a poem. I almost hear Eris screaming, if God is sane, he would stop this madness. And this river which flows into no ocean is the heart that I borrow each day. A stone cannot stop a river. A dead man won't light a stove or reply to friends' emails. It's he who writes obituaries and welcomes the mourners, God, the absent, prepares Arabic coffee in the last tent. Who knows how much a smile costs in the arms market today? Who knows the cost of a joyful song? A curious child points to the sky and asks his father, Dad, look, are those helicopters throwing stars at us? A friend makes another fiery statement before he disappears behind an ancient brick building. Even in heaven, someone will commit suicide. So these are the years of the poems that I wrote during the years of the war. So a bit heavy. Let me find another one since I've already. Cloud Cafe. There, at the entrance of the chest, between a throat and a tongue, stands a long line of humans. Workers in morose clothing, restless with weary faces, making plans and strategizing hope, waiting for the end of war. Frightened by the price of bread and potatoes and the cost of words. Amused by the concerns of global warming and conspiracy theories, while Ebola butterflies tickle the nose of their imagination until they laugh. Their only consolation, a cigarette, and ashes that drown entire cities. And when break time is over, they draw crosses and middle fingers with the call of time on the walls of the lung, then return to work. This is how the years of war pass, one by one, falling like calendar pages, fueling his grandiose plans, the lumberjack of life, the bookkeeper of martyrs, he who answers the prayers of the dead, who with one hand places medals on generals, while with the other writes on clouds his poetry of lament. This is how the years of war pass, ordinary. Nothing changes but the order of numbers and the faith of those who chant in the streets. While up there, in Cloud Cafe, somebody lifts his eyes for a moment, leaning forward to check on the loud noises from below, only to bury his gray beard again in his new iPhone. Shall we brighten things up a little bit? All right. I will read something a little nostalgic. This is one of the poems I dearly love from my very first poetry collection in Arabic. It's called I Will Arrive Alive This Time. Let me find it. Wait for me on the sloping road leading to the Corniche. And when I arrive, don't vent. Wait for me, I'm coming despite your storm. And even if you try to hide your resentment, you'll keep on waiting. Arrival is a curse on a traveler in a silk winged carriage. There, on the same street, next to the old church, under the yellow glow of the lampposts, where I celebrated my birthdays, there's an insomniac ghost who places his followers at the corners to stare at people while smoking and drinking beers in cans wrapped in black bags. They know everybody, even if they pretend not to. Your local eyes are vases of murky sea water, and their blinking is the divergence of the sea at the feet of our city. Wait for me. Even if I'm forced to pass, I will come properly, passing through the hole of the memory, and I will arrive alive this time. I'll read the last poem in the collection, and then I will stop. I want to see reactions and thoughts, and if you have any questions. This one is called Severed, and this one I wrote originally in English. Severed. How can I explain to my mother that solitude is unique too? How can I explain to my brother this indifference? How can I create any meaning while my words are being pureed for the next man's dinner? How can I fathom anything in these Scrabble-filled chronicles? Well, there's a caricature of my meaningful life, trembling and thrilled, I keep eye contact with whoever's running towards my deliberately escaping spaceship. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you, Hussam. And I'm still going to turn it back over to you. And if anyone has any questions or comments they would like to say to Hussam, please do so.
Hussam, can you talk a little bit about the translation? I know you've written in English and in Arabic. Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration and how it shaped the poetry?
Thank you, Kos. Yes. So a lot of these poems were written originally in Arabic, and a good portion of them, I would say maybe 60% of the poems had been already published in my two Arabic collections. And then in around 2013, when I first met when I first met Samantha, we started working on translating them. I would self-translate, and then we would sit together and kind of dive deep into the text and the poems. Um, I have to say that over the years, and because it is really a self-translation, I cannot deny that the English poems are not identical copies of their counterparts. They kind of merged into kind of different, even sometimes different endings and different punchlines and different atmosphere. It's and I've enjoyed that so much because it's given me a liberty of what a translator or translation gives the translator liberty to recreate. But here also, I felt like I have no bounds of experimenting and playing. It was extremely playful process because these are my poems and I can say whatever I want in English, or, it's like me going back in Arabic and just, taking everything down and writing them, anew. The same thing felt like that at a lot of junctures and points, especially as I was looking back at the final translations before submitting the first manuscript to Gloria in about 2018. And since then, for about 5-6 years, I really put these poems aside and this whole book aside. And, I kept giving Gloria a lot of promises to finalize the manuscript and never really did much about it until recently, when I decided to kind of pursue this publication. And I looked back at these translations and I've noticed how they are, they came to be poems that has their own identity, very different from the Arabic ones. If you can read both languages, and you can appreciate how these poems, they are not very similar in a sense, yet they have the same, they hit on the same emotional tender points and emotional, they come from the same place, but have taken converged into different shapes and through the medium of the different languages. I mean, I invite Samantha to say something about the translation if she would like to. I mean, I would love to hear from her. But from my end, this process was extremely liberating. It was extremely fun. And having Samantha guide me through the process translation. I have not done a lot of poetry translation before. Was extremely helpful, and for that I'm extremely thankful for Samantha. But Samantha, if you are willing to say something about the translation process, I would love to hear.
Definitely. Well, first of all, thank you. It was so wonderful to hear you read the work again. It's been so long since I've heard you. One thing I just want to share with the guest here is that Hussam translated these works. I acted more like a editorial shepherd for some of them, which was such an honor. But I think that Hussam gestures to the most fecund part of the experience for me, which was really grappling with the meanings that he was trying to convey. I don't speak good Arabic, and so it allowed Hussam and it allowed me to enter the kitchen where this beautiful meal is prepared. And it's always such an honor as a translator, because if you're working with a living poet, and I only work with living poets, is that you have this capacity to do this really excessive excavation of the thematic. And then you start thinking about how the narrative is laid over, and then you start thinking about the word choices, and then we get to play. Hussam's English is so magisterial already, but I have a slightly different sense of the language, a different sense of the colloquial. And so Hussam is right. It was a very playful process for us, and I loved it. I mean, it's really just, and it allowed me, which I'm so honored, I've only worked with Arabic poets, and allows me to enter that world and feel familiar to something that feels so close and so dear to me, but is not organic to me. So it was really a pleasure. The other thing I just want to say, Hussam, in hearing the work is, which is really moving to me, is that when we worked on it, I was so fixated on the specificity. I know Lataki a little bit, and all of these things were resonating, but when I hear them now, they feel so universal also. They feel so applicable to so many heartbreaks and to so much nostalgia that we all contain, whether from the West or from the Levant. They feel so relevant and continually informative. So thank you so much for the work.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha, for being part of this. Just, yes, please.
Yes,
Please leave.
beautiful reading. There was one poem I didn't quite get. Did you say strategizing hope? Was that the?
Mhm.
Oh, that was beautiful poem and beautiful phrase. So really
That's
captured.
Cloud Cafe. Yeah, yeah. That's a poem I've, it was really written in the maybe I can't really tell the year that it was written. It was during the years of the Syrian war, and it's kind of a reflective piece on the suffering of people through the experience of war. And through my work as a psychiatrist, I did a lot. I tried to do something about what was going on in my homeland, and I did try to do some field work, some relief work, but I also tried to write poetry, and that's kind of in a sense where my sense of I mean, some people ask me why this title of the book, the Chronicler of Indifference, and where's this indifference in this, and it made me, your question now, Lee, kind of make me think of that as, to a big part of the writing process of these poems, it was my way of putting this suffering or channeling the suffering that I was witnessing through the suffering of others in the medium of poetry. But I have to say that I was really feeling how indifferent this medium is to suffering, in a sense. And I don't know if this makes sense. It's kind of more of like an oxymoron situation where it's a medium where I am projecting on it a lot of the suffering, but at the end of it, it's just a poem, and it doesn't really relieve anyone's suffering. This paper that we've printed this on, it's not going to do much to the people who are suffering through war, or who had suffered in Syria, or currently suffering in Gaza, or anywhere around the world. This is extreme. So it felt like I was just chronicling something in an indifferent notebook, in a sense. That's kind of how it really felt, and kind of in a way continues to feel to me. I mean, right now I'm trying to reclaim this book by just making it a point of connection. I'm connecting again with people through what I've written during those years, but I really hesitated even to release this book, because I felt like, I kind of felt like, what is the point? What is the point of writing poetry?
I think a lot of the world wasn't indifferent, but your poems, they are not. I mean, they capture, in that line, it captures the desperation, and a lot of your poems capture the sadness and the loss. And so I don't see your poems as indifferent. I do see that much of the world was sort of indifferent to what was going on over there, and still is. So
yeah, and maybe that's kind of that could be the functionality of poetry, in kind of reflecting this indifference in the world into how I was feeling at that moment, and kind of putting it on words. So yeah, true. But at the end of the day, I was also sharing how, to me, it felt that me writing a poem is not going to really relieve people's suffering. And I kind of struggled with that a lot, especially during the times and the years where my countrymen were undergoing horrendous experiences, and I felt absolutely helpless towards it. And thanks Annie for saying, Annie's saying no, but the poem allows the reader into the suffering, and that's a good point. And that's definitely, it's kind of the other side of the that sometimes maybe the narcissism of the poet. Like we all have narcissistic tendencies, and my narcissistic tendency is really to think that I'm gonna really relieve people's suffering in the poems that I write. But on the other end, true, these poems reflect a lot of suffering, and when people read them, they empathize and they gain compassion. So whether I know that consciously or not at the time I've released this book, I appreciate hearing that from you, now that you're hearing this and you're saying, no, this is actually allowing us to get more empathic and more compassionate. But I also want to point out that to me, it's still I really don't know how I still feel about this book. I have to say that. And I've written a whole letter to the reader at the end, trying to really kind of just say where I'm coming from in publishing this today, in 2023. I really don't know. I always find myself, because I'm so close into people suffering. I mean, that's what I do in day to day. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm an addictionologist. So I work mostly with people I'm up on the forefront of the opioid epidemic in the US. I mean, I'm kind of always confronted with this question of, what is meaningful, and is there a meaning to all of the suffering around? And at one point I might have felt that my poems are creating some meaning to me, but then are they really creating any meaning in the world? Are they creating anything beyond the scope of these, whatever 90 pages? I don't know. And I had to say that I also grappled with a lot of meaningless regarding also my work in the field, as a psychiatrist who was working with the refugees for about 6-7 years in the height of the Syrian refugee crisis. It also felt very daunting, and I felt extremely helpless about making a dent in whatever that means in people's suffering. So I have to say to all of you who are attending this, forgive me for bringing this kind of extremely kind of cynical and harsh sense of purpose into whatever I'm doing or whatever I'm sharing with you. But it is these in these moments of these moments where I'm at the edge of, am I doing something meaningful or not? Is my work meaningful? I lose patients every day, even though I would try our best to kind of help people, we're always losing people. We lose people to wars as much as we trying to stay active to kind of keep wars at bay. And those are just few examples of many facets around the world where we as individuals, we might feel extremely powerless. But again, sharing this with you in this space and hearing, Annie and Lee and Samantha and Kos reacting to the reading, reacting to the imagery, to the poems, and it brings me hope again that, yeah, sure, this act of sharing our creative labor brings or could potentially mitigate some kind of suffering in the world, could bring some relief to the ailments.
Hussam, I want to comment with what you said. As you know, I worked in addictions for 40 years as a clinical director and counselor. Suffering, yes, and I write about atrocities. And yes, we hope people feel empathy and can feel, what you write. But also, you'd be surprised how many people don't have awareness. Yes, they know there was there's war, Syria, many other places. Maybe they don't understand it, but through writing, you can make them aware. And I think writing does in some ways ease suffering. It can't take it away what those people are experiencing, but you gave your time to refugees, to your countrymen, and not only here, and that makes a difference. And keep doing it. And I have a question. I asked you ages ago if your mom and dad were still in Syria, and you said yes. And I don't know if you have brothers and sisters there, but could you comment, are they writers? How they influenced you in your life to come here to be what you're doing?
So my father died when I was 10, so I lost him early in my life. I grew up without a constant parental figure. My mom is still alive. She's an architect. She's not a writer or an artist. by any means. I think I'm, I had uncles who were in the writing, but they were not directly influencing me. I think my tendency to write started early on. I've always thought myself as a poet, even before I was writing poems when I was 7 and 8, and I grew up in a household where literature is encouraged. We do read. My other siblings do read a lot, but no one was a writer or is a writer. Actually, all of my family is still back home. Still back home in Syria. They were not forced to leave, so they stayed, which is a natural thing. I mean, if you didn't have to leave, you don't have to leave. People who left, they really had to. So they're still there, kind of dealing with this post-war country, a fragmented, collapsing country, and they. I would say they are very indifferent about my poems and my poetry. It's not, they're not against it. They're not really big. They might not even see the meaning of it. I mean, I grew up in a household who's full of professionals who told me early on that writing and being a poet doesn't pay the bills technically. So I should do something else, and that's kind of why I was forced to become a doctor. Technically, it was not. I chose psychiatry later on as a way kind of to strategically save my sanity. I would never imagine myself being a surgeon. Thank goodness for that. A lot of people were saved by me not being a surgeon or another kind of a doctor. So I chose psychiatry because of how close it is to humanities, philosophies, and literature. And my immigration to the US was to pursue this training in psychiatry, but it also liberated me to do a lot of other things, including the writing, including the music. I find myself today in a place where I am very fortunate to have these multiple creative outlets and try to balance my day-to-day life, my career, and these creative outlets to remain in some sort of an equilibrium as I go through the motions of day-to-day life. I just became a father 3 years ago, so and I'm also learning on the go what parenthood is, and we have no family here, just me and my partner, and we are all kind of learning on the go, and this has been a major transformation as well for me. I'm yet to seriously start writing poetry about it. However, I have written a lot, non-poems. I have 2 novellas that are in a way related to this transformation in my life to become a father. They are not out yet. They are still work in progress, but finding different means to deal with this major transformation that happened 3 years ago. I realize I went on a tangent with your question, Gloria, but that is kind of that's the line of association associated with it. My brothers, I do have brothers and sisters, and they're in Syria. I have one full brother who is younger than me, and he has been actually having a little bit of a medical issues lately, and this has been extremely difficult, adding to my sense of helplessness, being this far away, not being very close in their life, and adds to the multifaceted estrangement I feel, being here but not fully here and not fully back home. I think this state of limbo that a lot of people in diaspora do feel, that they are kind of stuck in between multiple places, or 2 places at least, if not many more. And that certainly is a point of tension where a lot of my creativity has been coming out, whether through music, whether through writing the novellas, or kind of trying to finalize poetry or writing new poetry, which has been scant lately. But there's some stuff. So maybe in the next 10 years you might see another poetry collection from me, but not before then, unfortunately.
And Jonas, you have a question?
Thank you so much. Greeting to everyone here, and I'm so sorry that I'm in a place where I cannot put my cam and I see all of you. So I do apologize for that.
Yes.
Glad to see everybody. Glad to see Samantha, Kos, and Firas, and all of you. Hussam and Sam, first of all, congratulations on your work. And I definitely did not want to miss this. So I can't wait to get my copy, which will arrive actually on Monday. I want to just ask, sort of follow up to a Kos question, Hussam, you've mentioned, and I'll give a bit of anecdote, and I'll ask you because what you do is really very, very sort of brave. Jabra Ibrahim Jabra, as you know, one of the novelists that really very, very fluent and sort of he has a mastery of in English. And once Roger Allen and Jabra, Roger Allen translate Jabra's novels. He asked Jabra, "Why don't you translate? Your English is perfect." And we're talking about Ibrahim Jabra as one of the really very knowledgeable, Arab writer. And he said, "No, I would not want to touch my text." And the reason behind touching my text, because I will definitely end up rewriting the Arabic. Or I'll end up actually, once I'm translating it, which is right. I mean, we know translation is sort of like no book, no creation, and there is so much theory. I mean, we can talk about the in terms of translation and translation theory, but he would not touch at all. He is a person that's not willing to take sort of that chance and does that work because it's I write it, I'm done, I'll let someone else do it. And he's really more concerned about going back and rewrite the Arabic or changing somewhat. So really kind of a question to you. This is really, I'm so happy to hear about the notion of being liberated, which really makes sense because what you're literally saying is you might be creating a text in English which has nothing to do with the original Arabic, somewhat, I'm going to think, or you might have a different ending. But my question would be to you, at any stage, do you feel that you go back to the Arabic and you look at the Arabic and you do any switches to it? I mean, it's entirely different project if your Arabic is already published, but I'm talking about the text that you have. So I want to hear a little bit about the self-translation and what sort of like what you've mentioned, it gives you sort of an opportunity to do more and to hear of liberation, which is really great. But are there any sort of limitations to the process, if there are any, or what's your thought process while you're doing this? That's question A. Question B, you're right, both in English and Arabic that you mentioned that, and I think that that this is the really, really good. A lot of people like sort of be bilingual, they were the right. So sort of like, I want you to talk a little bit about the linguistic choice. When does it strike you, if there is anything to person that would be like, okay, I really want to do this in Arabic rather than English? Maybe it's like strikes me home to write this. Maybe English work for the. Do you have any sort of those sort of conversation, or we go back to the muse? You just pick up your pen and you write, and whatever happens, happens. So I'm very interested to hear more about these two things. And once again, congratulations. And I can't wait till we all of us get together somewhere. But greetings.
Thank you. I might want to start answering the questions by just saying a few things about my relationship with the languages. I mean, obviously, Arabic is my native tongue. It is the language I grew up with. It was the language my mother spoke, and I cannot escape my past that I was also a student in the country of the Ba'ath Party that really kind of celebrated Arabic language. I mean, for God's sake, I studied medicine in Arabic. No one does that around the world right now. I mean, except in Syria, you study medicine in Arabic. You go anywhere else, even in neighbor countries, Lebanon, Jordan, you study medicine in English. So my relationship with the Arabic, in addition to having a like my uncle, two of my uncles, one of them was a poet, but he's really old and he did not really influence me much. I didn't see him. He died when I was very young. And the other one, he was an Arabic teacher, and he kind of taught me I think very well. And my relationship with the Arabic language is extremely strong, more than just being native. I loved the language. I love it. I've written poetry in the traditional way from it since I was young. And and I do kind of continue to write in Arabic when the muse strikes in that direction. Now, my relationship with English is also long-lived. My mother had us tutored when I was in first grade, so maybe seven or eight. For some intuition, I really don't know. I've never really asked her why she had us. It was not really because in school at the time when I was a student. So I was born in '83, so that was about in 1990. She got us tutored at home and when we were first and second and third grade, and then we got introduced to English in school when we were in fifth grade. And I've always been a linguistic person. I love languages. I later on learned German. I had plans to go to Germany and kind of do my training there, but I've kind of canceled later on. I've decided to kind of veer into the America. But yes, I do tend to do well with languages. I'm not sure why is that. It could be genetic, just the way my brain is wired. It could be because my mom introduced us to English early on. So my relationship with English has been very good early on, and I kind of was writing stuff as a young kid, nothing worth even keeping on since. I mean, all of it was lost, but I do remember that I've played with it, and it has been a medium that I've been playing with and been playful with for a long time. Then I came to the US, and what is the kind of the main tool of my profession? I'm a psychiatrist. I mean, I don't need a stethoscope. I don't need blood tests. I don't need MRIs. I mean, language is really the medium through which a lot of psychotherapy happen, a lot of interventions. So I had to also develop to work on my skills more, and I through the reading, through the talking with people. Understanding the colloquials more. So this kind of leads me then to try to answer your question about when I sit to write, how do I choose the language? I do not really choose anything. It just comes. Whatever comes. Ideas sometimes come up in English, and I would write them down in English. They might come up in Arabic, and I'll write them down in Arabic. Sometimes I get into a mode of writing in Arabic for a period, then a lot of stuff would come up in Arabic. But then I would say, well, no, this will actually work better if I think of it through the English language, which is a much simpler, it's a much simpler dough. It's a much simpler tool to work with. The Arabic language is extremely complicated and intricate, and not that I do not feel like I have a sense of mastery over it, but not everything could be eloquently said or equally said in both languages. So sometimes it also depends on who am I writing for, what am I writing. Sometimes the essays start in a language, and then I would then later on think that it's much better done in the other language. So I'll try to translate what I've started with and complete it with the other language, and then go back to the original and complete it there. I have a lot of essays written in both languages that way, back and forth. So there is really no clear answer to this, more than just, circumstances and what am I reading. Also, my readings influence a lot of what muses come and in what language they come out. I do read them both as well, as much as I can. And this can really influence the appetite for writing in one. If I'm influenced by a specific poet, writer in either of the languages. But I do find myself in a place where I can switch back and forth easily, especially in the writing process. Obviously more naturally as I'm speaking, but in the writing process, I can find that switch easy on, and it's not and it's not deliberate and more spontaneous. That's really the most honest answer to your question, Jonas, and I hope I answered it in a meaningful way. Thank you for asking it, though. I want to hear other
Dr.
thoughts.
Edie? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I want to hear other thoughts of if anyone else would like to, you know, and if not, I might just read a poem or two if you guys would like. So whatever the group wants.
Would you read a couple more?
Okay, my pleasure. Let me choose something light. I love this one. It's called A Bullet Train Full of Celebrities. Life and what it passes on remind me of you. Panoramic elevators and Richard Dawkins' book about some selfish genes. Weird, vibrant colors and that hippie scent illuminating the air. Roasted coffee beans, the texture of old books, the sound of a window squeaking on its track, and that moment when winter blows against the glass. Life and what it passes on remind me of you. People's necks, moles spreading on bountiful acres of flesh, like a chair rocking alone on the porch of this universe. Life and what it passes on remind me of you. Julia Roberts' smile, Monica Bellucci's tan, and that wicked attractiveness of Scarlett Johansson. Life and what it passes on remind me of you. Dancing reflections on storefronts, hunger and crying babies, the smell of French fries and the taste of blues after midnight. So it became a habit that every time I sit in a bullet train going from B to A, I close my eyes, dismantle the wheels and windows, enter the memory space, and use your carefully uploaded portraits to build a photo exhibit. Deja vu. What you won't see again will forever reveal itself to you. On the cold facade of teacups, in the condensed water drops, in the hermetic crumbs under the pillows, in every text message that arouses your coma. What you won't see again will forever reveal itself to you in poetry dust, in black mud bottoms, in land flirting with oceans, in sailboats coquetting with fishnets. In a world like ours, in a possible universe that looks like ours. What you won't see again will haunt you, will choke your freedom, will arrest your imagination, will shut you down by remote control. The eyes open, you can't help but see. This is a little bit of I'm going to read a kind of a little of a philosophical one. The hospice of the neutron. If my consciousness creates the world, it thus creates you and creates the love you submerge. My consciousness, the convert, the creator, the creature, the nursery of light since the Big Bang, the cemetery of romantic ideas about body and mind, and Descartes, the dead. My consciousness, the hospice of the neutron. When I close my eyes, it reinvents you in microtubules and vibrates into a flamboyant bony after the world perishes, into a simpler land after we all suffocate, into a faraway planet glowing below the Andromeda and above Venus. If my consciousness creates the world, it must measure the inclination of your nose saddle. It must document the frequency of your breath in hertz and observe the photons bouncing into your retina. You are my consciousness, the static, the recumbent, the dead, the living, the hospice of the neutron. It's solipsism in your image that remains but changes every time I see, that alters every time I remember, and fades every time I think.
Thank you, Hussam. We have time for one more.
Okay, this
then
will be
we'll
the
have
last one, and I've written this one originally in English. It's called Coexistence, and it's a short one. Coexistence. They live in peaceful coexistence like some New Yorkers and members of the squirrel species. They live in different worlds of inner experiences. He cooks her dinners, she pays the internet bill. They exchange passing looks every so often, and with curiosity, they watch life passing by in this way, exactly as it ought to be. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining and listening.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Hussam. That was wonderful and an incredible discussion too. So thank you so much. And I'm so happy to publish your book.
Thank you. I'm so happy for it to be out, and thank you so much, Gloria, for putting up with me over all this for this time to see this kind of go through the finish line. So thank you, appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Samantha.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, good night, everybody, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Bye.